Hello everybody, your friendly neighborhood Fuzz is here. So before going into this, small bit of tidbit, this is a second attempt at a recording because my first one, halfway through, I realized my microphone wasn't connected, so there was no audio at all. So I was simultaneously sad and laughing at the same time. Smart. Always check your settings, kids. Anyways, so I'm making this video calling it a re-review because I had a review originally recorded, but I just never got around to actually making it into a video. And making a first impressions video after we've had a Masters and after I've talked to Album, Johto, and Torg about these cards would be just stupid. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go through these cards and first say what I originally rated them, and then whether or not I think this rating sticks based on the Masters we've seen, based on what we've talked about. This is not, extensive data. Think of it as first impressions, like after some testing and discussion. So let's get to it. Wonderbird, my favorite named card. I originally rated it 2 stars. Rating it 1 stars now. I think it's just too weak. First of all, the order side of it is just pointless. Gaining health while you are shielded is almost meaningless. The only time it matters is against stuff like Noxious Fumes. The gaining speed is nice, but the fundamental problem with this card is shields are always temporary, and there's just simply not enough shields to grow on. And I don't think there's ever going to be enough shield-giving cards for this shield emblem deck to be a thing, so I don't think so. I don't think Wonderbird has any chance. Moving on to Hallowed Essence, originally rated it 1 star. I'm going to stick with 1 star. One thing I heard about it is the idea of using it with something like the Triangelica Sentinel to protect it from sacrifice, but I think that's just too specific. The card itself is just too mediocre in every sense. It's a 4/4 if you play it, which is for 4 mana. That's blech. Protection from sacrifice. I mean, are you just hating on the corruption specifically? And then the transferring of might emblems is actually okay. And so for the improvement of this card, I would suggest making it start with 3 might emblems, so you could play it as a 5/5 for 4 mana and 2 aspect, which is like okay, I guess. And then or have the 3 might emblems for 2 mana, which I think is interesting. It's kind of like a delayed value card, like a turn 3 do nothing, and then it's kind of like you playing Cayano for a little bit. I think it's neat. And maybe change the first effect from hating on sacrifice to be something else. I'm not sure what though. I just don't like hate cards in general. Or Commando, originally rated 3, though I was considering 4, but now I'm more confident in the 3-star rating because one thing I did not catch at first, and that's something that Torek explained to me, is that it's completely pointless to gain health only for the duration of combat, because that means that if this guy received 3 damage during combat, he'll just die as soon as combat is over. So that's pointless. The purpose of health-giving effects is for them to last until the end of turn, so that the creature heals before the death effect would trigger. As it is, it basically just gains lifebound while it is blocking, which is just kind of whatever. It's a bit mediocre. The main purpose of the scars would have to be the attack, making it a 4/3, and that's okay, I guess. I'm just not sure if something like Rage Rush could afford this kind of slow card, or if any other deck, maybe like that Wisdom Rage mid-range deck I'm gonna discuss shortly, but I'm not even sure that would be good enough when it's competing with the raiding party. So I'm gonna stick with 3. I think it's like it's a decent card, but I don't think it's gonna stick around for the meta much. Goblet Dungeon, originally rated 1. I'm gonna stick with 1. Not a big fan of these color switching shrines. I just don't think they accomplish that much. Their main advantage is to play it for the level and then have the extra ability on top of that, which is admittedly useful, but the downside is that you have to start with it. You have to use these for level, otherwise if you get them later, you're giving up card draw for not very good abilities. This ability in particular is just, it's like meh. You could make the argument that you could help to beat down these control decks that can't heal, but you already have Curse of Risha and various other effects to do that, and it just seems too marginal. Sylvan Wisdom, originally rated 1 star. I'm going to stick with 1 star. Ultimately, for this card to be good, there would have to exist a spirit that really, really benefits from that 2 extra energy. So much so that it is worth paying 2 more mana for it. It's just that I think if a spirit like that existed, it would just be overpowered. Straight up. And it would have to be nerfed. So I would just suggest making this card cost 1 mana. I mean, Call of July costs 1 mana, right? And that's completely fine. Yeah, you also get 2 energy with this, but you have to play the card. You can't just search for it and then hold it. So I think at 1 mana, it would be interesting. Life Force Essence, a 5 stars original, and I'm going to stick with 5 stars. It's even better than I thought. 2 things I missed. One is Grand Reunion can play this, and that's really good. I mean, it's just another target, and Grand Reunion wants to stick big creatures on the board anyways. And the second thing is that if this targets Dust Titan, the nature part of it, where you reset its energy to 2, the game considers that as energy gain, so the Titan actually gets buffed. Yes, it's minor, but it's something. I actually didn't know that that's how it works, so it just makes it better. I think we're going to see even more of it. I've always wanted to see a creature like that kind of copies another card. And certainly Wisdom, it seems fitting. So, yeah, magical goat that can turn into a dragon. I like. Totulan Raiding Party, originally rated 4. I'm reluctantly going to downgrade it to 3. The main problem with this card is that in the deck that it would want to go into the Wisdom Rage, it conflicts with Battle-Scarred Elder. Battle-Scarred Elder won't draw you a card if you play it after this. And that makes Battle-Scarred Elder a lot worse. In fact, so much so that you just wouldn't bother playing it. So I think for this card to be played, you have to be playing some sort of a mid-range deck rather than your typical control deck, where you play this, you play Phoenixes, you just play other big cards, maybe even Arulak, and just try to beat down your opponent or put on enough pressure to where your Red Dragon or something can just finish them off. I still like this card a lot, but I think it needs to be field tested a bit more before we can commit it to a 4-star. Certainly, it would have to be a different variant of a deck, not what we have now. And the Underground Maze, it's another one of those. I originally rated it 2. I'm going to stick with 2. The effect of this one is at least, like, decent for a Reanimator type deck. It would be nice to start with this and have that option to draw and discard. Like, that would be legitimately decent. But I just think it's minor, and you have other ways of doing that. Though I wonder if Reanimator ever became really, really powerful, this Shrine maybe would just become much better, just as a convenient way to discard. So, for the moment, I'm sticking with 2 stars because Reanimator isn't exactly that popular, but 2 stars does mean that it could become better if there's more synergy. Currently, just not the case. Good old Charlie. So, according to Toric, a lot of the decks from Masters that had him were banned, which is why we didn't get to see him very much. Which certainly suggests that it's very powerful. And just in general, I rated 5 stars originally. I'm going to stick with that. I certainly think his career is only just beginning. I want to see that embody Death Knight into the face deck. But just overall, if you have any other Souls of Enchained Souls like Vats, I mean, Charles is good even then. Just start embodying all your cards. Though I do have to say that this would require some sort of a mid-range deck. Maybe not full on control, because these control decks tend not to have creatures to swift into their face. But I think Charles has a bright future. I mean, a card this solid. Maybe I'm being a little bit over-optimistic, but I do think a deck could be built around Charles and in a variety of different ways, taking advantage of his effects. The last of the shrines. This one was actually in Jodo's deck. One of Jodo's decks, and I don't understand why. I assume it's for that last effect where you pay 2 mana to get a Mind Emblem. That's not very good, but I guess you could argue it is it's just an additional effect. If you start with this and you level with this, it's kind of nice. It just means that your future ones, you know, they all have to be used essentially for level. Otherwise, you're losing out the card, and I don't think it's worth giving up a card to gain like a one-time effect of this. You could argue that what you're drawing instead is a spell that reads pay 2 mana and 2 life to put a Might Emblem, which is unfortunately pretty garbage. But this I will still stick with 2 stars, which is what I rated it, because the effect is at least like okay. Whereas the Goblet Dungeon I think is just pointless. I think both this and the Maze card both have effects that are at least useful enough where they would make some kind of a difference by having an extra one available. The Looted Despot actually made its way into Masters. Originally, I rated it 3. I think I'm going to basically give it 4 stars on the basis of it seeing play in a few Masters decks. I don't think it's actually that good. Though, to be fair, a 3/3 flying Lifebound is pretty good. I mean, if it doesn't die to a Fireball or something, it's solid. It's just the main problem, of course, is Fireball. Just removing it for less mana than it costs. But if it doesn't get removed, honestly, it's solid. It's a vanilla card, but it's a really solid vanilla card. And Dominion and Corruption already work together to make a deck, to make several decks. So, yeah, the Looted Despot fits right in. Eternal Servants, originally rated at 3 stars. I'm upgrading it to 4 stars. The effects of gaining life, oh my goodness, is actually better than I thought, because you play it, you pay the 2 mana, and you get 2 extra life when these guys die. That's not nothing. I mean, that helps. If you're fighting against an aggressive deck, it could make a difference. You know, it thins your deck, works great with Flesh Sculptor. It's just really solid card. Very simple, very nice. I like it. The Scatman. Oh man, this one was the hardest card to rate, and honestly, I'm still not sure about it. I originally rated it 3. I think I'm gonna give it 2 stars now. I just don't understand how to make it work. There was an attempt to make it work in Masters with the Twilight Guardian, but even with Twilight Guardian, it has a problem, because the whole point with Twilight Guardian is, because everything is a spirit, all of your corruption cards are now spirits, and all of your order cards, if you have those, so that means Twilight Guardian triggers off of every single creature you play. The problem is, for your corruption ones, which summon an Enchained Soul, that Enchained Soul is also killed, because currently the way the effect works is every creature that enters the field enters with a weakness emblem, not just from your hand. So the Enchained Souls get killed. If you play the Pony Brigade, they'll get killed. Hilarious, but not too good. And, you know, playing creatures like that and sacking them to make Scatterer bigger, it's certainly pretty cool, but Scatterer can just get removed, and then the whole thing just falls apart. It is admittedly a very interesting card. I'll give the developers credit for that. It's just very confusing as to how to make this good. I have absolutely no idea how to make it good. So I'm sticking with 2. I think it could be better one day if there actually is some synergy. So just imagine, let's say, that they print some kind of a zombie, like a 5/5 zombie that enters play with 2 weakness emblems, right? And then maybe it has some other ways to regain its power. But then Scatterer can use it. It'll come in with 3 weakness emblems. He sacks it, and that's 3 weakness emblems spread out. So yeah, more synergy is needed. Until then, the Scatman continues to be a meme, I think. Not sure. Cleanse. Originally rated at 5 stars, unexpectedly. I'm going to make a rare exception for the 2nd time in the history of Spellweaver and rate this 6 stars. The only other 6-star card in the game is Valley of the Ancients. What does it mean to be a 6-star card? It means one of 2 things. Either the card is played in just every deck, or the card is so powerful that it warps the meta completely. Now, this is certainly in the first category. Cleanse is the kind of card you can literally throw into every deck in the game. It's ancient, it's instant, it's colorless, it can remove anything, and it draws a card? I originally thought it couldn't go into aggressive decks, because why would they want a 5-mana removal card? But then I remember that there is such a thing as electrostatic armor being attached to the wall in the north, which something like Rage Rush basically can't kill. So Cleanse could just, bam, take care of that immediately. And 4 copies of this were basically in every Masters lineup. And I expect that 4 copies of Cleanse will be in every single Conquest lineup moving forward. And that means it's played in everything, basically. And that means it's 6 stars. It's... Wow. I mean, the card has everything. I mean, what else could it want? It has the instant speed. It has the... It's a 2-for-1. It's ancient. Now, you could argue that because it returns the card to the deck... instead of actually destroying it, it's worse, but not necessarily, because if you hit something like a Phoenix, it doesn't die, so it doesn't trigger. So there's pros and cons to destroying versus just shuffling back, and enough that I'm willing to call that basically a wash. And you take all these things together, yeah, the card is insane. While I like the concept of aspects having ways to shore up their weaknesses, this might be a little too good. And if we're gonna fix it, I think the simplest way is just to remove the card draw. I think it's a bit ridiculous that you're drawing a card on top of removing whatever you want. What an insane card. And finally, we've got Twilight Guardian, originally rated at 2 stars. I guess I'm gonna stick with 2 stars. I was tempted to call it 1 stars, but you can just invoke it and have a nice lifebound creature. And putting 5 spirits into play maybe isn't as hard as I thought. But I just still think the payoff is a little bit weak. If you can get an extra Enchained Soul, for instance, that's pretty nice. And I did mention Scatador. But of course, the problem is that Scatador, it just ends up getting killed. And ultimately, there's just not that many Corruption Spirits. That's the main problem. If there were more of them, it would work. But, Enchained Soul itself is a card you could play with this. Basically giving you a second Enchained Soul, which is really good. But is that really worth running an otherwise kind of bad card just to make this work? I don't know. I'm half tempted to call it 1 star. But I'm going to go with 2. It was played in Masters, so I'm going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt and go with 2. Even though... I think the card isn't very good. Very awesome art, by the way. Anyways, that's it for this review. I don't know what my next video is going to be on. I know I kind of make these rarely. It's mostly just because I can't think of anything too interesting to talk about. And because I don't play much. Certainly, I don't play ranked. It's pretty hard to make gameplay videos. Probably the closest thing I could try is just some kind of a conquest. Just give that a try. See if after having cast 36 Masters, I've actually learned a thing or two about playing Conquest. Spoiler, probably not, and probably I would suck. Anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you next time, and yeah, have a good day.